Welcome to Potter Revisited, episode 15. Today we are discussing chapter 15 of Philosopher's Stone, The Forbidden Forest.
Or as we like to call it, the future looks bleak, Harry.
Rest in peace, Harry. You've had a great 11 years.
Yeah, well, he had a great few months and a terrible 10 years.
So where we left off last episode was we thought it was so stupid that Harry and Hermione forgot the cloak.
Yeah.
But they get caught because they're stupid and they forgot the cloak, and they get detention. Or they get caught by Professor McGonagall.
Well, they get caught by Filch and then brought to Professor McGonagall. Yeah.
They have no good stories, no cover-ups.
So if you were in that situation and you had been brought to McGonagall pretending we're Gryffindors and she's responsible for our punishment, what excuse would you come up with in that moment? Why were you out of bed at midnight in the astronomy tower?
Why couldn't they just say that they wanted to see the stars? Look at the constellations. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, there's so many lies they could have told that might have gotten them we knew we shouldn't have, but we were studying for our astronomy test and Hermione was trying to explain a constellation to me and I couldn't understand. So then it looks like, okay, Harry making dumb decisions, typical, and Hermione valuing education above everything else, typical. That definitely would have been a slightly...
Maybe it's just because we're both Slytherin and that's just what we think.
Where we just immediately have an excuse that's gonna lessen the punishment. Maybe.
Because both of us were just yeah, there's so many excuses. And both Harry and Hermione were blank. Blue screen computer.
I feel like Harry's 11 years old and everyone knows he's been through an emotional life. He's so many times he could just get away by things by being I was thinking about my parents and I was sad and Hermione took me for a walk because I felt like I wasn't connected to them and she was telling me that maybe I didn't get to spend a lot of time with them, but the stars that I look up at from Hogwarts are the same stars they looked up at from Hogwarts. And isn't that beautiful?
See?
Harry
didn't play his grief enough.
Just and then what is McGonagall going to say? Stop more. He just did not have the amount of Slytherin that we have. That's clearly what it is.
Well, they couldn't make an excuse, so Professor McGonagall is very disappointed, which is the worst thing you ever want to hear from, an authority figure that you look up to.
Yeah, they do say that this is the most disappointed in a Gryffindor McGonagall has ever been, but I do not believe that. I feel like this is dumb, but Gryffindors have been dumb forever.
Yeah, I feel like this isn't the worst thing she's seen.
Since the beginning of time, Gryffindors have done... I think it's her leaning heavy on the emotional manipulation to get them to realize, stop doing dumb shit. But there's no way people haven't done worse things in Gryffindor House. You know what I mean? They're reckless. They do a lot. I'm sure she would not have been thrilled if she had found out that James and Sirius were running around as unlicensed anime guy. She would have been displeased. And not telling her. She would have been mad they didn't tell her, almost more than them not being licensed, or registered, rather. So I think there's lots of things that Gryffindors have done. Everything Dumbledore does, if he's supposed to be a Gryffindor, is more disappointing than everything Harry does.
I just feel bad for poor Neville. He's trying to do good by his friends, and he's trying to warn Harry and Hermione that Malfoy was out to, get them in trouble, and then he just... And then McGonagall makes it seem like it was Harry's intention to play a trick on him, and this poor guy can't catch a break.
Yeah, poor Neville. And he's so sweet, and he was trying to be a good friend, and he was being brave and a good Gryffindor, which you don't get enough of or appreciate enough about Neville early on before his blossoming or his metamorphosis into the one true Gryffindor. So it's nice to see these moments where he's brave, and it's hard to see it being turned against him. Not only is he getting punished, but they're making him feel like it was done to him on purpose, and that's really harsh. But I feel like McGonagall definitely leaned into being overly dramatic because she knew that would be the best way to sort of guilt trip them. It would be the most... if she was just angry at them, it wouldn't be as effective as her really leaning into, the trouble they've caused for the rest of their house and the disappointment they are, Well,
it's a pride thing for Gryffindors. They're very, prideful and... stuff. She knows how to manipulate Gryffindors, being a Gryffindor.
Clearly. I feel like manipulating Gryffindors is not that hard. I bet no one here would jump off that cliff. All the Gryffindors going over the cliff. All of them.
I just find it really funny, like, the comparison. This is the first time Harry's lost, like, a lot of points. Like, in the earlier chapters, Snape's taken points from him, and he's been really upset about it. But now he's lost 50 points, and not only that, it's 50 points each. So they've lost Gryffindor 150 points all at once. And now he's thinking that this is the worst thing he's ever done, and he feels so guilty, and he's gonna stop sleuthing around because he can't believe he did this to Gryffindor. And in the later books, he stops caring about house points.
Yeah, I think the house points start to mean less to Harry the more he faces real consequences. So, like, when you're a kid, losing points or getting grounded seems like a real problem. But when you're an adult and you face, like, the realities and the consequences of real actions out in the world, you realize that there are so many worse things that can happen. So I think it's just the more he's exposed to real danger and higher consequences, the less he places value on small consequences like house points. No one's gonna die if you lose some house points, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but Harry's 11, and this really matters to him. And, of course, Harry starts to get the repercussions the next day when everyone realizes at the next morning that 3 first years, including Harry Potter, lost them 115 points, and now they're in last place for the House Cup. It's a big deal. So this is the first time Harry's kind of isolated. He goes from the beginning, all throughout this book, being this famous kid that everyone wants to talk to, everyone knows, everyone really likes him. And this is the first time in Hogwarts, in the magical world, where he's kind of isolated and no one likes him, which happens a few times in this book. But Harry does mention that at least he has Ron with him. And that's going to be a big part in the later books when he really feels alone when he doesn't have Ron. Ron's his, big tie to the Wizarding World and everything. But I saw that even the Quidditch team was mad at him. Like, they said that they wouldn't talk to him, and if they had to mention him, they called him the Seeker. So does that mean, Fred and George won't even talk to him?
I mean, I think Fred and George probably just enjoyed found it funny, so they probably joined in. I don't think they would have meant to be cruel, but I can't see them giving up an opportunity to be ridiculous. Speaking of Fred and George, I continue to think it's ridiculous that apparently the twins have never lost 150 points at once.
Maybe they're just good at not getting caught.
I mean, yeah, maybe they have more Slytherin in them. Not to say that only Slytherins can be sneaky, but we're good at it. They clearly have more Slytherin in them than Harry, so they get away with more. They plan things out better. They probably are infinitely better liars, because sitting there quietly is a terrible attempt at a lie. But I still think, 150 points at once, keeping in mind that, they're always together, so it could be each of them losing 75 points, because there's no way one does it without the other, which would be 150 points. And I can think of loads of things they've probably done that would be worth 75 points each.
I just feel like maybe they're just good at not getting caught for all the big things they do. Because we know they do small things, and I feel like they probably lost, a few points just for doing small things. But knowing what they can do in later books, I'm they're probably doing crazy stuff. But I just feel like they never got caught because they probably have the murderous map at this point.
Yeah, they're just sneaking everywhere.
And also just feel like they're smarter than Harry and Hermione are in their exhibitions outside the castle.
Tori's hot take. Fred and George, smarter than Hermione.
Ooh. I'm going to get people coming for me, maybe. Hermione is my favorite character. I just feel like there's different kind of smarts. And at this point, they probably are smarter than her.
Absolutely.
At least for shenanigans.
Yeah.
So moving on, we find out their detention's going to be in the Forbidden Forest, which I thought was super odd because they're in trouble for being out of bounds, being out at night when they're not supposed to be. And the solution is we're going to send them into the forest where they're not allowed to be.
Yeah. It seems dumb. I guess if I tried to think it through and find logic in it, so if I assume it wasn't Dumbledore's idea, then I would say maybe they know the forest is scary and dangerous, so they're sort of showing them the types of situations their misbehavior gets them into. Oh, you're going to be places you shouldn't be at night. This is how it could go. This is how scary it could be. Do you want to continue to make those choices? It almost makes sense as
It's scared straight.
A more extreme version of what they did with scarier potential consequences. But that's me trying to look into it if it wasn't Dumbledore's idea. And if it was Dumbledore's idea, he was lol, you know what would be really funny? They almost died.
Let's send them into the forest. Obviously Dumbledore didn't do it. I thought maybe Hagrid might have stuck up for Harry and Hermione and asked if he could take them. Because it was probably something that he was told to go do. Go check the forest to see what's hurting the unicorns, and he probably felt guilty because Harry and Hermione basically got caught because they were helping him out of his crimes that he committed.
Casual crime.
Involving children in his crimes, but, you know,
Yeah.
it's Hagrid, so it's just kind of odd the way Hogwarts is. It's just so backwards.
On the topic of crime and punishment, they used to torture the students. They used to take them to the dungeon and hang, like, not only that, but Filch isn't as old as Dumbledore. And he vividly remembers doing it and misses it, which means while Dumbledore, almighty, wonderful, pure of heart Dumbledore, if you can hear me rolling my eyes, you should, because I'm rolling them loudly, he was like, well, we torture students. And they would just let that be a thing.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, we don't know how long Filch has been working there, but we do know that when Mrs. Weasley and Arthur were at Hogwarts, it was a different head caretaker, and he also did, like, punishments like that. Because I think Mr. Weasley got caught being out of bed or something when he's out with Mrs. Weasley, and he had, like, a scar or something, so it, like, implies corporal punishment.
Yeah.
So it's just weird because, like, and Dumbledore was a master when they were at school, I'm fairly sure. Or at least he was there.
At least he was a teacher there. So the point is, Hogwarts just abuses children.
Until Harry Potter comes. And then Dumbledore's like, you know what? Actually, I'm done with this.
I'm going to emotionally abuse this one instead.
Yes. As we have said before, we are a Dumbledore hate podcast.
It's so true.
So we get a lot of mentions of werewolves in this chapter, which is interesting because we know in the third book, it'll become a big plot point.
I think it's fun that we get werewolves sort of at the same time we get unicorns. We're like, oh, werewolves might be a thing, and then we're like, oh, unicorns are a thing? It's very fun. And you don't really know at first, because Draco mentions werewolves, correct? So you don't really know if he's just bullshitting them to make them nervous, because it's Harry and Hermione, how would they know?
Yeah.
So at first you're like, oh, he might just be Dracoing. But then you're like, wait, unicorns are real? In that case, sure, yeah, werewolves. What isn't, you know? Anything is possible if you just believe.
Yep, so we go into the forest, and I thought it was weird that Hagrid splits them up, which I get that they're on the detention, they have stuff to do, but I just feel like the kids aren't supposed to be there anyway. And I get they're doing detention, but I feel like they should have adult supervision. This is like detention. And also, they're not supposed to be in the forest anyway for a reason. So it just feels like such
absolutely neglect. Yeah.
Irresponsible stuff. Yeah, like what could have happened to Harry and Draco, or when Draco and Neville went by themselves? Like, anything could have happened.
They could have just died. Draco could have been like, wow, there's this one cool spell I heard my dad use. I want to give it a go, Neville. Stand still. Avada Kedavra. Like,
yeah, I mean, just like anything could happen. It was just like,
he's too young to know the consequences of his actions. He's 11, you know?
Like, I'm not surprised because this is Hogwarts and it's a nightmare and no one's responsible for these children, but just like, and it's like Hagrid too. Like, Hagrid's not even like we love Hagrid and he's great in the forest, but also like, he doesn't have magic. Like, what's he gonna do if something happens?
He doesn't really. He has a crossbow.
Yeah, but honestly, like, what if one got hurt? Like, he doesn't have, like, a spells or anything, or a way to, like, notify anyone.
No, he doesn't. And it's like, even if you try and, like, minimize the severity of the particular situation, nobody would send unaccompanied 11-year-olds into a forest they've never been in before in broad daylight, let alone a forest
Yeah, nighttime.
they've never been in at night where there's monsters. Like, it's just gross negligence.
Especially because looking at the fact that they don't know what's hurting the unicorn. Like, they don't know what it is. So they're like, oh, this mysterious creature that's hurting unicorns, which is, like, crazy because unicorns are pure and innocent, and if you kill one, you're cursed for life.
So, clearly evil creature.
Yeah, let's send 11-year-olds to go find it.
11-year-olds who don't know any spells.
Yeah.
Hermione knows some spells. Harry, not so much.
Of course, we get to meet the centaurs.
Glorious, beautiful, wise centaurs.
We'll talk a bit about it later with the centaurs and their
divining of the stars. I do think it's really interesting how, I mean, they're supposed to be wise, but Ronan talks about how the innocent are always the first victims. And especially in the current state of the world, it's so prominent. It's such a thing that you don't think about, but you're like, it's never the people who are truly involved with a conflict. It's some innocent person, like a unicorn, beautiful, sweet, pure creature. And it's really heartbreaking. As a unicorn lover, it makes me sad.
I find the centaurs very interesting because they're the first kind of creature we meet that is like humanoid. So they speak to Hagrid and to the kids, and they like have conversations with them, but we do get kind of like their characteristics, how they're very like secretive, and they are very focused in like divination and astrology, and they just keep saying that Mars is bright tonight. Hagrid's just like, I'm so done with this.
I think they do a lot of world building in this chapter. Like, not only do they expand it by teaching us about new creatures, but the forest is like a whole new location, sort of, to Hogwarts. And it really encapsulates a lot of what is to come and what is going to exist in this world. It gives us a really broad idea of what's going to be there.
Especially thinking about how much happens in the forest in this series.
Absolutely.
It becomes a big part of the series. Especially knowing that Harry comes into the forest in this book. He dies in it in the last book.
Yeah, exactly. It's full circle. It's a beautiful full circle moment, though. Like, the first time Harry sees Voldemort since he has memory, like, since he's not a baby, is in the forest. And then when he dies, by the magic of Voldemort, he dies almost in the exact same spot.
Interesting to think that Hagrid's also there for both those things, kind of.
That's true. Hagrid's bad luck. You just shouldn't hang out with Hagrid in the forest. You know, or you'll die. No, there's no way around it. You'll die. Speaking of Hagrid, he just full out calls Draco an idiot. Which, to be fair, yes, absolutely, Draco is an idiot. But should a teacher be saying that? No. Should a teacher be saying that to a little narc of a student who tells his father everything, will complain about it, and he probably will hear from the school board? No.
Well, at this point, Hagrid's not a professor, so he doesn't have like he's just a caretaker. So I feel like kind of like with Filch, he doesn't have like a responsibility as like a teacher to the students. He's just helping out at the school. So it's just kind of like Filch says a bunch of like terrible things to the kids. He can kind of do what he wants to, and it doesn't have a lot of repercussions because he's not directly involved with the students. He's just there for the school, but it does change when he does come professor, and he has to kind of learn to watch what he does, and he doesn't really take it that seriously.
It still kind of feels like another example of Hagrid and his not understanding about how you can interact differently with different people, and when you're an adult, you can't say certain things to children that you might say to another adult. He just doesn't understand that context difference.
I think it's definitely that Draco was scared, and his way of dealing with being scared and not wanting to show it was being like, this shouldn't be happening. And he was trying to like hide that how scared he was, and Hagrid was just like, nope, you're being dumb. You want to get expelled? Fine. Go. As much as Draco is such a shit in like the first couple books, like, still, he's just an 11-year-old kid that's scared about going into the forest, and I don't blame him for that.
A lot of 11-year-olds are probably little shits. I'm sure I was.
This chapter has a lot of plot stuff / foreshadowing, which what the last few chapters have, but this is probably like the biggest one, because this is going to lead us in to the big reveal in the next 2 chapters.
This is heavy with the foreshadowing. It's also heavy with the things that could have changed everything. Like Harry really early on in the chapter saying, no, we've done enough poking around. Imagine if he followed through and was like done with poking around. It would have been the end of the entire plot. There would be no 6 books after this one. His curiosity is what saved the entire plot.
I think he has this feeling a lot where Harry has this like constant need to like look into things, which I think was kind of part of the prophecy where he has to do it. But it's so many books. He's like, I'm gonna stop doing this. I'm gonna like have a normal life, and then it's like, actually, no, you're not. He's pulled back into it.
By Dumbledore. I also think, in regarding foreshadowing, Hagrid saying that, oh, if you're with me, nothing in the forest will hurt you, is such an untrue statement, and he's so naive about it. I mean, even the spider, even Aragog, would totally kill them if they were with Hagrid. They just agreed Aragog just won't kill Hagrid. There was no deal of not killing anyone else, regardless of if they're with Hagrid.
It's like we talked about last episode, but Hagrid and his affinity for, like, magical creatures, usually dangerous magical creatures, that he believes the best in them. And to him, like, obviously, if they won't hurt him, they wouldn't hurt anyone else. And he just wants to believe in second chances. So he generally just believes that, and it's obviously not true. We even see how the forest changes in later books where he's in the forest with Harry and Hermione seeing Grop, and the centaurs like don't want him in there, and he's getting kind of pushed out. So at this point, he's pretty welcome in the forest, and he knows what's going around in there, but by the end of the series, he's kind of being pushed out of the forest by the creatures that are in there.
Also in foreshadowing from Hagrid is Harry remembering that Hagrid referred to Voldemort saying he doesn't know if he has enough human in him left to die is such a beautiful foreshadow. I mean, Hagrid is spot on, and that is not the most common of things.
I think especially when life has been so bad, it's kind of just like with us with COVID the last 2 or 3 years, that everyone is just so ready to welcome like hope, and everyone was so ready just to be over with Voldemort's reign of terror that everyone just like didn't really question the fact that when he was gone, if they're just like, of course he's gone. But Hagrid had like this gut feeling that this isn't the end, and very intuitive.
Yeah, I agree. Very good job, Hagrid, which is good because I feel like we've been making fun of Hagrid a bit much in this episode.
I mean, okay, we just have to say we both love Hagrid. He's the best. It's just we question some of his choices.
Yeah, exactly. He's a very pure of heart, good-natured, wonderful guy.
We love what he does for the kids, but also he does a lot of questionable things for the kids.
This is also kind of a beautiful example, I mean, you don't know it at the time, but of how much Dumbledore is involved in absolutely everything and manipulates everything. He gives Harry the invisibility cloak so Harry can go sneaking, and then Harry gets punished for sneaking.
Yep.
And then he goes out into the Forbidden Forest, and he gets the invisibility cloak back again to continue sneaking. Very Dumbledore to be like, I need you to use this to do what I want. Okay, I want you to do things again. Here you go. Like a gentle push in the direction of what he wants.
Yeah, so do we think that Dumbledore knew that Quirrell would go into the forest that night, and that's why he wanted Harry to face Voldemort to know that Voldemort's out there? Because to this point, Harry just thought that Snape was stealing the stone for money, for wealth. He didn't think there was anything dark about it. He just was like, Snape's bad, we don't like him, he's gonna steal a stone and sell it. But now it's more than just like, it's like life or death now. And Harry's perspective completely changes 180, for he says he's gonna stay out of it because what matters if Snape gets it, whatever, he gets money. But now it's Voldemort, and if Voldemort gets it, then the whole world's over.
Yeah. It's interesting. And also Harry wouldn't really realize any of that if the centaurs hadn't told him too much. I wonder to what extent if Dumbledore was involved in that as well then. Like if he said, Harry, you know, like casually went out to visit the centaurs and was like, sure would be great if Harry Potter knew the following. You know? Because like Dumbledore's one of the few people who think almost as far in advance as the centaurs, you know? He's already planning what's going to happen 7 books from now. And it seems like something he might do. But also I could see the centaurs not doing what he tells them because screw you, tiny mortal, I am centaur.
Well, yeah, we do see that all the centaurs except for Friends don't like interacting with humans, especially, was it Bane or Ronan, was very angry about him rescuing Harry. Yes, Bane. Because their whole thing is that they know what's going to be prophesized, but they don't want to interfere because they just read the stars and they're aware of what's happening. But Friends, if Dumbledore was able to know the centaurs, he probably could sense that Friends is younger and maybe more susceptible to manipulation, and he seems to care a lot more about like the entire world, the entire Wizarding world, not just his centaur herd, but he seems to care about the humans that are in it. And he seems to care about if Harry lives or not, because we do know that Friends ends up coming into Dumbledore's protection later in the book, so who knows what Dumbledore was cooking up back then.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, it's just like Dumbledore consenting to allow Harry Potter to go into the woods with Voldemort and Draco Malfoy. That's what happened, right? I mean, he wasn't sure Voldemort would be out there, but he knew the guy was about. And he's like, go out into the woods at night in the dark by yourself. It's gonna be fine. Like, that man is so cool and so smart and Order of Merlin first class. Why, Dumbledore? Why?
What a guy. Yeah, so Friends tells Harry about how slaying a unicorn is like a terrible thing. You'll be cursed for life. So I'm wondering what a cursed life would mean.
Yeah, I mean,
what would happen to you?
I feel like my first thought is thinking about like the sectioning of his soul for Horcruxes, where it's kind of like you lose a little part of yourself every time. Maybe killing a unicorn is like that. Or maybe because you destroyed something so pure and beautiful, you just can't experience the type of pure, beautiful joy that unicorns radiate. So, like, if you drink their blood, you'll never experience happiness, kind of, which makes sense because it's not like Voldemort's ever happy. He's satisfied, or he's angry, or he's achieving his goal, but even when he, like, does something big and influential, he doesn't seem happy. We're ignoring the weird hugging Draco moment because it's not canon. He looked happy at that moment, but it made me uncomfortable.
Ugh, yeah. I mean, the movie took a lot of liberties. I was wondering if it had to do with karma or not, because I feel like it's like you live a cursed life, a half-life. And I'm just like, I don't know if it just means that, like, you forsaken something innocent and pure that was defenseless. So, like, it just feels like releasing bad karma. You do something bad, so something bad's gonna come around and happen to you. Because it's like, drinking it sustains you for a time. So obviously you had to keep doing it. So it's like you're putting yourself above someone else. And there's a lot of, like, astrology and astronomy and stuff in this chapter, so don't know where karma fits into that.
It kind of feels like the repercussions or the cursed life that is an outcome of drinking unicorn blood might just be like the feeling of guilt will linger forever. And maybe Voldemort is almost exempt to that because he has no ability to feel empathy, because he seems to be the same amount of jerk the whole time. It doesn't seem like...
Yeah, I mean, he has a fraction of a soul.
Yeah, just a piece, just a smidgen. A smidgen of a soul.
Just a little bit.
So, let's dive on into some divination.
Ooh. So we don't quite have divination as a subject yet. That will be coming up, but there's a lot of little bits and pieces that will lead to around the divination side of magic that were kind of referenced in this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's astrology, astronomy, divination, future predicting.
So the one clue we have is all the centaurs are saying Mars is bright tonight. And Mars is known as the bringer of battle, and a bright Mars could indicate a war breaking out soon, according to a lot of astronomy stuff that I looked up. So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, and Mars is also the god of war. So again, it makes sense.
So like, what's going to happen? This is like the rumblings that Voldemort is on his way to getting a body back, or he's attempting to. So it could be indicating that something's going to happen soon. And we do know eventually the war does break out. So it's like kind of an indicator.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting because the centaurs are considered to really only be interested in the distant future. So for this particular prediction, I wonder if Mars is bright to predict Harry going to battle with Voldemort in the end of this book, or if it's predicting the battle in the 5th book, or if it's predicting the battle in the 7th book. Like, there's so many different times where it happens. I wonder which one that Mars is telling them about this time, you know? He goes to battle a lot.
Yeah, because I really only considered the 7th book like a battle. Because I feel like just like leading up to it, it was just Harry kind of like outmaneuvering Voldemort for whatever he was trying to accomplish. Being that get a body or get the prophecy. But at the 7th book, that's where they're both kind of on two separate sides. And it's not really just about Harry. It's like the entire wizarding world is either on one side or the other.
Friends is also predicting terrible things. He mentions that the planets have been read wrong before, and he's hoping it's one of those times. So for me, that means he's talking about something he saw in the stars for Harry, because he's talking to Harry, or Harry's side of things, because it's clearly a bad thing. So I'm wondering if that is him knowing Harry's going to die in the forest one day, and this is him being like, gee, I hope this kid doesn't die in the forest. That would suck.
That would make sense, because Bane was really mad that he took Harry, and so maybe they all kind of know that Harry's supposed to die in the forest, and he's like, well, why did you rescue him? And we're not supposed to interfere in, like, the...
Yeah, leave him to die in the forest, as it is foretold.
Yeah, that's foretold. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, especially with how angry Bane got.
I also kind of, regarding the centaurs, wonder what their lifespan is, because if they view humans as insignificant, they must have a much longer life, and sort of just see humans as a brief thing. So I wonder how long they live.
I think it's also said that wizards have a bit of a longer lifespan than, like, muggles do. Because I think James Potter's parents were, like, older when they had him, so there's that. But yeah, it just seems like they're kind of, like, I don't know what I can relate it to in other books, but they're just kind of...
In my mind, it's kind of like the elves in Lord of the Rings, in that elves live longer than mortal man. And so it's like they might see each other in the same lifespan, but they still have so much to go after the humans have died. Like, I feel like maybe centaurs live 200 years?
Yeah, I can see them living a long time because it feels like they experience so much that's like foretold. And if they feel like way about humans, it's like humans are just a blip on their like radar. Like, they don't interact with humans at all, really. They just let things happen how they're supposed to happen.
Or I wonder if centaurs are almost reincarnated, like they reach the end of a cycle and then they're reborn almost, but they continue to have some of the knowledge from before. Because even if they live 500 years, something significant happening still impacts you, like a war, if you've never been around for a big war before. But maybe they've lived through most of the wars, you know? So like their bodies decay, they're reborn in some way. That would explain a lot of how they see things very philosophically, because to them, death isn't even really the end of anything.
Yeah, everything's all just like one big circle.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that for centaurs. It sort of matches who they are, but I don't know. So please feel free to comment on Twitter or Facebook or Spotify and let us know how long you think centaurs live, or if you think they have a cyclical life cycle. Cyclical life cycle is saying the same thing twice.
Yeah.
I'm thorough.
So, anyways, we end the chapter off with Harry and Hermione rushing back to the Gryffindor to tell Ron about what happened, and Harry is completely, again, changed his mind, where now Voldemort's involved, and Ron's freaking out, and Hermione's all nervous, and Harry's just thinking he's gonna die, which pretty traumatizing for an 11-year-old. He's just kind of like, yep, and Voldemort gets the stone, and he's gonna come kill me.
The end.
That's my life, I guess. And we kind of get Hermione's already has a bias for fortune telling, since she does comfort Harry saying that Dumbledore is around and Voldemort doesn't like Dumbledore, so as long as Dumbledore's around, you'll be fine. Like, nothing that will happen to you. And then she also says she really idolizes Professor McGonagall, especially in the early books. So she's like, she told me that fortune telling is a very unsteady branch of magic, so she doesn't put much faith in it. And that'll be a big thing with Hermione in the later books. It's just her narrow thinking and her needing proof and logic for everything before she'll believe it at all.
Yeah. I definitely think Hermione has a dislike of what would be considered soft sciences. She doesn't like things that are open to interpretation. She likes things that are provable, factual, can be repeated, hypothesized, replicated. She wants things to be able to be replicated and have the same end results every time, because that's how she learns. She's kind of the person, in my mind at least, that in high school for Muggles would love math and would love biology and would love physics, but would struggle in English. They're like, I know how to add up all these numbers because when you do that, it's always this result. But in English, when they ask you what are the motivations behind this character, there's no clear-cut, definite answer. You know? I feel like that is where Hermione fits. I feel like Hermione also likes being able to learn how something will end, or the result of something. I know the result of this math equation is this. I know the result of this arithmancy equation is this. But when it comes to other things that are open to the interpretation, it doesn't matter how good you are. It could be something else. And so even if you have a good answer, it's not definite.
It brings me back to when Half-Blood Prince, when Harry's using the prince's textbook and Hermione's using the normal textbook. And Harry offers her this textbook because she asked him how he got his potion to be basically perfect. But she wouldn't use it because it wasn't the official instructions. So even though his potion was better, she didn't care about it being the best or not. She just cared about doing it properly. She had to follow the instructions. Yeah,
she likes a clean, linear process that is, again, replicable and repeatable. Again, I've said the same thing twice. What do you think, Fred? Same thing you think, George. But I definitely think that's what it comes down to. Even if divination wasn't at all considered a wishy-washy subject, which it seems like quite a few people have that opinion of it, it's never going to fit with the type of knowledge she likes and desires. So it's never gonna really satisfy Hermione, and it's not going to be something she can believe in. You know, if it's right 75% of the time, it's not always right. So why bother? I think Off the top of my head, it's very interesting the way they introduce us to divination, because the way the centaurs talk about Mars and the sky and the stars, Hagrid's kind of rolling his eyes, sort of like, okay, Hagrid doesn't take it seriously, but that doesn't mean much. Then Hermione's like, I also don't take it seriously. And you're like, okay, it really doesn't. Like, Hermione also doesn't believe in it, so it's baloney. But, like, it's not actually baloney at the end. There's a lot of very accurate predictions that happen. We know it's not clear-cut and it's open to interpretation, but if properly interpreted, divination is a very, very successful tool and a really cool, complex magic.
I think a lot of the reason it isn't taken seriously at Hogwarts is because of the teacher, and it kind of shows that a teacher can kind of turn you off on something. Like, Harry doesn't believe in divination until he sees a real prediction from Professor Trelawney. But everyone else is like, divination's stupid. Like, Ron doesn't care for it, Hermione drops it, and McGonagall doesn't care about it.
Mm-hmm. And the people who like it, it's almost like an art. It's like fun and interesting and open. So the people that like it are the artistic students. People like Lavender Brown, who seems like...
Yeah, but Lavender and Parvati are like very into it.
She's more open to that kind of stuff. Likes it more because it's... Yeah, she's not a math person. You know, she's an English and art person. And as an English and art person, I understand and respect it. But it's interesting how they prime us to have the opinion Harry and Ron and Hermione will have of divination early on, which is, it's baloney, don't take it seriously. Because when you know that some of the predictions can be correct, you can read the novels completely differently and see how so many predictions that even seemed wrong at the time end up being correct.
It might have been intentional to make the readers biased against like fortune telling until we get the third book, because the whole time we get meet Professor Trelawney and she's like this outrageous character, so you don't really believe anything, and it all seems kind of stupid because they kind of can tell she's making stuff up and she's just a bit over the top. And then it's really surprising at the end when she actually makes a real prediction. And then Dumbledore's like, actually, she's made one before. So then you find out at the end of that book that, okay, it is real. Like, there is, like, evidence to back it up. But even after that, everyone's still kind of like, it's dumb.
I feel like I would love divination. I would enjoy it.
I just want to do the reading the tea leaves. I've always wanted to do that.
I love tea, first of all. Point one, love tea. But I even have I spent a small fortune, so more than $20, on like a yearly planner that has astrological notes in it. So like it tells you like, according to the moon, this is a good day to do this type of thing, and you're going to be sensitive to this type of stuff. And like, I haven't even looked into the science enough to know if it's true, but like being able to look at it and say, hypothetically, it's a better day to do this because of the moon makes me feel a little bit better doing certain things. I'm like, just in case, the moon is there for me. So I can only imagine in a world where like you can do really cool, tangible things with divination and astrology. I would absolutely adore it. Crystal balls are cool.
Yeah, I mean, when they were doing their dream deciphering, I thought that was cool, even though I never remember my dreams.
I frequently do, and I also talk in my sleep. So if I don't remember, someone around me might. But I used to keep dream journals because it's great. And I've read all of Carl Jung's collective work on dream analysis because of the person I am.
See, I find it so cool, but I never remember anything. I remember like a handful of dreams that really stuck with me because they were like the weirdest dreams I've ever had. But I never remember like anything really tangible, at least nowadays.
My most recent noticeable dream was we opened the door and there were a bunch of zombie children there. So I stabbed one because that's what you do. And in real life, I punched my glass of water right off of my bedside table.
Have you ever had any Harry Potter, like, dreams?
I'm sure I've had Harry Potter dreams. I mean, especially because every couple of years when I do the binge reread, I often will do it, like, at my cottage, and there won't be a lot of people up there, and I'm just alone for days reading Harry Potter. So when your day is mostly that, your brain is so absorbed in it that you end up dreaming about Quidditch games or some such ridiculous... It's often weird. Like, it's almost like at Hogwarts, but none of them are real Harry Potter characters. But in my mind, I know who all these people are.
It's so cool. I'm so jealous of people that remember dreams.
I mean, I love dreams and I love dream experimentation. Like, I looked into, for a long time, lucid dreaming. And I did some of that, which is really, really neat. I love it. And I don't know why, but, like, all the things they told me to do didn't really work. But, like, there's weird things I can eat before bed that make it easier for me to lucid dream. So, if you want to try lucid dreaming like me, eat a spoonful of chocolate icing, a pickle, and a piece of cheese before bed.
That sounds like someone's pregnancy craving.
Don't. I've never been pregnant, and I am not pregnant. But for some reason, I don't know how I figured it out. I think I was in middle school when I figured that one out. But it just helped me lucid dream. So if you want to have a dream you can control and go on your own little adventures and actually make the smart choices, try out the pickle, icing, and cheese trick.
Interesting. I think on that note, we should wrap this up before it gets more weird.
Good night, everyone, and please enjoy your late night snack of icing, pickles, and cheese.
Ugh, gross. Thanks for listening to this episode of Potter Revisited. We will be back to discuss Chapter 16 of Philosopher's Stone, Through the Trap Door. And then we'll only have one more episode to go until we finish this book. Just crazy. Yeah, and of course you can reach us at Potter Revisited on all the social media platforms, and you can email us at potterrevisitedpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.
Sweet dreams, listeners.
Bye!